Welcome to RecLess, a podcast making people smarter and more knowledgeable about parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from around the country, bringing their own unique and sometimes entertaining perspectives with a surprise guest each episode. This is RecLess.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 10 now of RecLess Podcast, as we try to bring in more knowledge to your world with regard to parks and recreation. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Shane Mize of Pflugerville, Texas, and Jay Tryon, Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. How's it going, guys?
What's up, everybody?
How's it going, man? Happy to be here.
Good. Glad to have you both here today. And another episode. I think we've got a nice treat ahead of us with our guest. So I'm really excited about that. But first, of course, we are now the Friday before the national conference, right? So we're a week out to really making those final preparations. I need to do a lot more work in terms of looking at my schedule. In terms of your week two prior preparation for conference, just, for the audience out there, what's that like for both of you? What's your week like at work? I know what it's like for me. It's hectic. It's busy. You're trying to wrap everything up. It's very similar to going on a vacation. On the flip side of that answer, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what it's like to return, kind of your landing. You get all this information, right, from a conference. We've had these great conversations. Sometimes it's very difficult to put it into practice right away, and some of the information might just stay with you until you're ready to go because you're playing catch up. Tell us about that experience for both of you.
I'll go first. Yeah, the week before conference is a little hectic. I don't dive in. Obviously, my tenacity is not very strong. I don't dive into the schedule until like seconds before I leave normally. As of right now, I don't know what my schedule is. I know that I have a couple of requirements of places I need to be other than that. And that's kind of how I vacation. It's kind of how I relax. It's kind of how I live my life. I'm on the program committee, so I do know there's good program sessions that are going to be out there that when I heard them 6 months ago or whatever, 8 months ago, I was interested in them and hope I might be able to get to. We all have some friends that have their whole calendar planned out. And I don't have any of that. I usually look at it on Thursday or Friday. So most of the week's trying to make sure everyone knows I won't be in next week, and making sure if there's any responsibilities, I assign those to somebody. Hey, while I'm out, if you could, carry the water on this till I get back or get it across the finish line or whatever's needed. And then conference happens, and conference for me as an introvert can be pretty exhausting. I am very fortunate that most of the time Hannah comes, and that normally actually keeps me, as y'all know, tolerable as a human being conference week. I do get to get some energy filled back with her and seeing y'all. But overall, for an introvert, it's a pretty overwhelming experience for me, even 15, 20 years into it. And I just know that.
Or 40 years in, it feels like.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, dog years. NRPA ages you in dog years. And then when I come back, I don't try to implement anything immediately. I'm one of those that feels that I think I'm pretty well known for being fairly creative in our industry. And I'm not a point and click creative person. I'm not someone in a meeting that you can say, hey, Shane, come up with a creative idea in the moment. I've always tried to explain, I think the creative process and opportunity is a lot like the match game. Remember the memory game you play as a kid? Like you pick up, the tree, and then you pick up the well, and you're like, okay, I remember where both of those are. I think an opportunity comes up where I remember something that I have read about or been exposed to at conference. And I'm like, okay, I remember where that is on this memory board of life. And I'll reach over and grab that aquatic contact. And okay, here's the cool aquatic program we're going to do for the next aquatic opportunity. It's a little bit more organic in that sense. It's not something where I come back with a list of bullet points that I have to implement.
Now, before Jay gives us his spiel, I believe I'm in the middle of both of you probably with my planning process, but did Jay raise his hand when he said his schedule is also... Jay, do you got a color-coded schedule all ready to go that you could email us?
Yeah, so you know where to avoid you?
Here's the funny thing, okay? For those that maybe have listened before, I couldn't make this a more fitting response, but I'm like the complete opposite of Shane.
Yeah,
and
that's perfect.
If you know us, then you might know that seems to be a trend. But I have created a schedule of like just outlining that week, and I've done it probably did it about 3 weeks ago. It is something that I've done every year. Like I literally have files saved of every conference of like, I plan on going to these sessions at these times at these rooms, and I know on this day there's this meeting and this agenda, and it's just like, if I don't do that, I get a little stressed, like the day of or the week of like, okay, there's 1,000 people trying to go to this session. Which one am I trying to go to? Like, I got it locked in. I know where I'm going. So that regard is easy for me. What makes this year a little different for me is I have 3 major events that are taking place the Sunday that I'm leaving to go to conference, the Sunday after conference, and the following Sunday. So I'm involved in this initiative called Corridors Connect. Ultimately, I used to run an event called Open Streets, where we shut streets down for 3 miles and we just program the streets. We have changed the philosophy of this event to be a smaller scale, and we're doing them in different neighborhoods. And we're kicking it off on October 8th. It happens to be the same day that I'm flying out. So it's a little hectic knowing that I'm planning these events and I'm like literally catching a flight mid one of the events. That's why I'm actually flying out later than normal. And then there's another event on the 15th, and then I'm going to be gone like that whole week planning. So it's a little different this year, just trying to plan ahead more than I normally do for just day-to-day operations, plus these events that are taking place at the same time. And then post conference, I try to not like come back and bombard staff with like, oh my gosh, I saw this idea or this program. Like, that's definitely not my style. But what I try to do is get with my team and just being like, hey, I want to go over these things that I saw. We're not going to implement them immediately, but like just kind of give them like an idea of what some things are that I witnessed that I think would be really impactful for our communities. And that way, like they can review it and see if I try to get like session notes or maybe get the PowerPoints or just, or even connect with those speakers of those sessions. And then maybe we hop on a call with that person or group of speakers. And that way, my staff that may not have been fortunate to go to conference can hear about it firsthand, and then we can make a bigger impact when we're implementing something in 2 months or 3 months or whatever it may be. But I think to me, it's like a balancing act of coming back. Obviously, you got to play catch up coming back, but then you also do want to implement some things while they're fresh, but you don't want to overwhelm the staff of putting on too much after so much intake after a week of conference.
Yeah, that's great stuff, guys. I can honestly say that I fall in the middle of a lot of that. So I'm not going to reiterate a lot of what you said. I'll take it to a personal level. So on a personal side of things, leaving with your family, and now in my case, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and my wife who's working as a teacher full time, that always is another balancing act when you're at least prepping to leave, right? And so I do everything I can to set them up. For those of you who don't know me, I do all the cooking in this house. And that's something I love to do. So basically, before I get going, I'm prepping meals for them for the week and making sure that I could do as much as I can to help her out, because I know how stressful that could be leaving someone home with a 1 and a 3-year-old. So on the personal side of things, I think there's always this behind the scenes, and maybe we don't talk about it a lot, but there is a lot of preparation that goes when you're going away and leaving your family. So I just wanted to kind of add that as well. Let's get into our episode. We have a great guest. So as is a very common theme so far with a lot of our guest today is an Academy member. So I see the head nods. One is a yes, one is a no. So I didn't give you much.
Means absolutely nothing.
Well, it means a lot. Don't take that away from people.
No, I just mean of the people we'd be interested in interviewing, there's a large majority of them probably in the Academy. So
you're saying you don't have a guess right now.
No.
Okay. Little more. Majority of the career was spent, and that's 35 plus years, in the Midwest with a gold medal agency. Currently has spent the last 4 years of their career with a 2023 gold medal finalist in California. So after 35 years in the Midwest, headed out to the shore. A former chair of the National Certification Committee, and has also sat on the National Certification Board. So clearly a very strong supporter of certifications. Anything. Do I have anything out of either of you right now? I think I've got you stumped.
I got nothing.
I haven't seen that look on Shane's face in this entire series.
I normally am pretty good at this. Have they been on can we ask a question? Have they been mentioned before on this podcast?
I think so. Yes. Yeah. Because we've had a conversation about one of the clues that I'm about to give you in
I
a
have
moment.
one idea.
Okay.
I don't know if I should say before the clue or after. It's a shot in the dark.
Let me keep going.
Okay.
All right. So our guest is a former distinguished fellow for the Kansas Recreation and Park Association, and is currently chairing the Academy's mentorship program and serving as my mentor. So Jay, you should probably know by this point, based on your participation in the mentorship program. And Shane, I'm not sure that you would.
I think this person sent an email out yesterday to all of us, and I received it. Actually, the timing was pretty perfect because I received it about an hour after I had a meeting with my buddy / Academy representative.
That is
So
correct.
I believe I know who it is.
That is correct.
I don't know if I know.
All right.
Yes.
So
I feel so much better than you.
Is it? Are they a former tennis player?
no. Well, I mean, maybe, but I think
It's
I know
not who
where
I'm
you're-
thinking of, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going with
I
that.
couldn't remember where she had felt. I didn't feel like she was in California. So, okay.
All right. So without further delay, our guest today spent 35 plus years 35 years with Johnson County Park and Rec, and is currently the director of Parks, Recreation, and Libraries for Roseville, California. Please welcome Jill Geller.
Hello.
Yay! Hi there.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And I am a tennis player, so
It would.
Yeah,
It,
so
me, Tom.
no, that's why.
it would have tricked me though, because it wouldn't have been the next guest I'd had. If you would
I
have
know,
taken-
I know who you were thinking of.
Yes. Yeah, you should have said yes, and then Shane would have been like, yes, I know, but nope, you would have been wrong.
Would have been wrong.
All right, that was a lot of fun. Jill, you have an amazing resume. I have had the pleasure of serving as your mentee in the mentorship program, and I've had some of the best conversations with you. So thank you for those. And I really couldn't think of a better guest to have great conversation with for our show. I mean, we've had a lot of great guests, but again, I'm really excited about this conversation. So let me kick it off. And let me preface this for Shane and Jay. I have a follow-up question that I'd like to ask after this first question. So really, what's really standing out to me is that 35 plus years in Kansas, right? And now you're in California. That's a pretty dynamic change, not only in profession, but lifestyle, I'm sure too. And from what we've talked about, it fascinates me. So can you just enlighten the audience a little bit about what that was like, and, the why, where, and how that came about?
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. I ask myself all the time, what were you thinking, and what made you do this? But I will tell you, my career at Johnson County Parks and Rec was fantastic. I would not trade a single second of that. And really, that's where I started. My career was there, at the very base level, like many people do. I was a recreation coordinator, did a little bit of everything, top programs, officiated volleyball, all the stuff, gym supervisor, and just kind of worked my way up the ranks there over the years, and until I became the director. And I'm going to go off on several tangents here, so rein me back in if you need to do this. But early in my career, in 1995, Johnson County Park and Recreation District won the gold medal award. And I remember being a young professional thinking that was the coolest thing. And, not only am I in the park and recreation field, but I work for the best agency in the nation. I mean, there was just such pride. So that kind of prompted my desire to just always be the best, and always keep that level in my work and in the agency's work. And so anyway, worked my way up the ranks, became the director. And then again, we were a finalist and the gold medal winner while I was the director, which was really rewarding. I had fully intended to spend my entire career at JCPRD, is what it's called. And it's in the Kansas City metro area. And so being a big Kansas City Royals baseball fan, I know you guys have all heard of George Brett. And so I was a big George Brett fan when I was younger. And, he spent his whole career with the Royals. And so I always said that I was going to be the George Brett of Johnson County Parks and Rec, because that was my plan. Well, this opportunity came out here in California, and I'm very late in my career, obviously. And my husband, I have 3 sons, they're all grown, and my husband and I just kind of looked at each other when this came and said, "Guys, do you want to take an adventure? What do you think?" And we just decided to take an adventure. Johnson County Parks and Rec was in such a good place that I felt very comfortable, leaving it and knowing that it was going to be just great. You know, it wasn't going to miss a beat. We had such amazing staff and a wonderful team. So I just felt good. And I knew if we didn't do something like that then, we would never do it. And so we did. And we come out to Roseville, and now I love this organization, and the staff is outstanding. And we were a finalist for the gold medal last year and again this year. It's just been fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And the stories that you've told me in our conversations about the hiking and this, yesterday, we just had a conversation about how you kind of took a weekend and you're still exploring 4 years later, all of these different locations that are just all new adventures for you. So it's really fitting that you said to your family, want to take an adventure. And I can resonate with that. You know, we're not in a position, we've talked about this, we're not in a position where we really want to relocate, but when the time is right, and an opportunity strikes, that's a really great story to let people know that doors do never close. You know, there are times where it might open up for a new opportunity, and that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I should mention, you know, the reason I came out here wasn't because I wanted to leave my job. This agency attracted me, but really the lifestyle out here attracted me. My husband and I are avid hikers. And like Tom said, you know, we're still exploring out here all the time. And we took a little extended weekend trip and did multiple hikes, and every one was a completely different experience. You know, one was right on the coast, one was in the hills and up in the redwoods, and one was along a lake, a crystal clear lake, you know, just day after day. It's just always something new. So the lifestyle fits us very well out here.
Well, that's great. And I want to kind of follow up on that process of leaving somewhere after 35 years. And we've had conversations, and this is a topic that we haven't really covered in the podcast yet, but succession planning. And you obviously, from our conversations, people don't know this, I know how strongly you feel about succession planning, and you're doing some great things. I think some thought that goes into the process that maybe we all should be looking at a little deeper. And you've shared some resources with me, which I'm super appreciative of. So really, tell us a little bit about, you know, leaving somewhere after 35 years. You know that we know by that you have so much passion for the community. You've given a life, literally a lifetime career to it. So how do you leave somewhere like Johnson County after that amount of service, feeling comfortable to leave it in someone else's hands? And now in Roseville, a second part of that question, how are you preparing for succession planning there?
Well, I do have a lot of thoughts about succession planning, and I feel very strongly about it, but I also feel like organizations put too much pressure on themselves about succession planning. And oh my gosh, we got to have a succession plan, and what are we going to do? And those are all valid thoughts, but I think so much of succession planning should just happen organically within the organization. It should be stuff that you're doing every single day. And so I have this kind of philosophy of my own that there's 5 steps in succession planning. Now, the first one is, you know, kind of identifying your potential successors or people, your rising stars, people that can be your future leaders. And one, kind of identifying who they are, but then also letting them know the opportunities that might be available. You know, what are the leaders of the organization going to do? What do they do? How long are they going to be there? And also getting a handle on that. You know, how long are your leaders going to be there? Do you have people that are ready to retire in the next year? Hopefully you're having those conversations so you're not ever caught off guard. But another thing is, people leave the organization not just because they're retiring. Also, you know, look at me, you know, opportunities come up and they leave for a lot of different reasons. So sometimes you're not aware of that. So you just have to kind of be ready all the time. You have to always be preparing your organization. So again, one was identifying those rising stars. And then, you know, another piece of it is developing them. And that's where I talk about training. And that training can come in the form of mentorship, which I think is one of the best opportunities out there. And Tom, thank you for saying that I've been a good mentor for you. And I'm going to flip it and say you've been a good mentor for me, even though you're technically called my mentee. I've learned so much from you. And that's the great thing about mentorship. It really is a two-way relationship. But, you know, training that might consist of mentorship, of job shadowing, of opportunities to get certifications and trainings and conferences, all the things that we're already doing, that's part of succession planning. And that's why I say we put too much pressure on ourselves. I think we're doing more than we might give ourselves credit for in succession planning, just with the things that we're doing every day. Making sure your department has a master plan, because as a new director, if you step into, or a new leader, if you step into an agency and you don't really know what the roadmap is, where they're going, what their goals are, that makes your job that much harder. If you're stepping into an established organization that knows who it is, that knows where they're going, it's much easier to take the reins and help get them there. So I think strategic master planning is another part of succession planning. And hopefully most agencies have that already under their belt. So give yourself credit for that. Another one is goals and objectives. What are the goals and objectives for the agency and for the divisions within? Again, letting that person step into that role and know what's expected of them and where they're expected to take the organization. And then the last one is just policies and plans. A lot of people hate policy manuals. I don't know if you guys do or not, but I've always felt like a policy manual is kind of like my handbook. It's kind of like my instruction book, which my husband will never look at when we buy something new and how to put it together. He throws off the instruction manual, but I'm the one that looks at it going, okay, this is how we do this, and this is how we do this. And I think that's all helpful information in an organization as well. So I don't necessarily feel bound by policies, but kind of assisted by policies to help. So anyway, that's it. I mean, it's identifying your people, it's training, it's having a plan, and then having documentation to help them along the way.
So I've got two questions as follow-up. One about your role in the process of making sure one department's ready before you leave, and then another on just leaving itself. So Roseville obviously was something that appealed to you, but was it right timing and the right opportunity? Like 2 years before or 2 years later, does Roseville happen? Like, do you have to have your department in a spot where you can start to look for that next opportunity? Or does that opportunity come knocking and it's so great that you say, listen, y'all are in a good spot. Y'all are going to figure this out. I have to go pursue this next great thing for me. And y'all are going to bring in someone, or, you'll have someone bubble to the top in that process. Did you have to wait till you were in a spot mentally with your leadership in the agency before you felt like you could leave?
I did. I mean, I think that answer would be different for different people, but I did. You said it well. I spent practically my whole life there. I love that agency with everything I own. And so I would never have left it if I didn't feel like it was in a really great place. And that took some stuff, some work on a lot of people's parts during my tenure as director, because we didn't have a deputy director position there. And that was something I felt strongly about, that we should establish, and for a lot of reasons. And proud to say, I'll give a shout out to Jeff Stewart, who's now the director, because he was the very first deputy director there. There were other people that could have stepped up and been ready. It's just an excellent organization. But those were some of the things I thought we need to do. Okay, we need to get a deputy director position. We updated our strategic master plan. We had Trust for Public Land come in and do an economic benefits study for us. I just wanted to get all this data and all this documentation ready, because all those things help you succeed. They help any organization succeed. So we got a lot of stuff done, like in my last 5 years, although I wasn't planning to leave, but again, that's why I say a lot of it, I think you just do organically to make your agency the best it can be. You're doing all those things, and then you come to find out, and now I've set it up for success if I'm leaving.
And now you've left, right? So you've got the agency in a good spot. You mentally felt like the kids are out of the house or whatever it was, like all the boxes are checked. Tom, Jay, and I often get people asking us questions about job opportunities. And when it's an opportunity, and when people ask me and it's an opportunity for them to go from one agency to another, I always encourage them to do so. I grew up and it was a little bit more of a tumultuous childhood. Like I was in a lot of different homes and all over the years. And I remember in my childhood seeing people at different times, me having to move schools and move houses, and then seeing a kid that has never moved from that one neighborhood, knows those same friends, and then we both go off to college, and seeing how much easier it was for some of us than others to have to create that muscle of walking into a room for the first time, right? And I've often thought of that when people say, hey, should I take this opportunity in a new agency? I always feel like there is something about being in a new agency that you can't replicate if you're a career-long professional at one spot. And you're definitely a professional either way, but like walking into a room where you're not a known commodity, or the event you're trying to promote isn't a known commodity. Even 35 years into your career, what was that like, having to maybe work on some muscles that maybe you didn't have to like lean into a long time in a one agency type career?
It was really good for me.
Yeah.
It was not easy. You really hit the nail on the head. It was not easy. I don't think I had mentally prepared myself for that as I should have. But I've always had this mantra of never stop learning. And when I came out here, I was, learning through a fire hose. It was just, everything is different. And also I had worked for a district, a special district, where I reported to a board, and then I came into a city, that has a city manager and a council, and my district had 13 huge parks. I mean, that's what we managed, and over 10,000 acres, but over only in 13 parks. Here I come out here, we've got 84 parks and 4,000 acres of open space. Everything was different,
Yeah, the district job to a city job is totally different.
Yeah. Parks
Jay-
and Rec,
Jay believes that too.
Parks and Rec. Yeah. Jay, can you speak to that?
No, well, it's just funny. We were having a conversation last week about park districts versus agencies, and that's why he's not going to throw a joke out there right now.
Jay said they're the same.
And I said they're totally different. I said they report to different people. They have different philosophies, different.
I'm on Team
That's a
Shane.
Well, okay. The context is not completely accurate.
Don't worry about it. We'll edit all this out.
Actually, no. Now that we brought this up, I want to get Jill's opinion on this. So the real context of this conversation was the executive director or the director of a district, he's saying, is a very different job than a park and rec department. And I was saying that they have like literally very similar, if not the same, responsibilities. Now, like the funding structure, the tax structure, that's different. But your role as a director, whether you're a park and rec director or a park district director, is not completely different.
Okay. So
I'll get you can totally give us your opinion on that.
Well,
yeah.
Jill's the expert.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think this is actually a really good conversation.
Yeah.
So now I sound like I'm being wishy-washy and I'm trying to make everybody happy, but I'm a little bit on Team J now with that one, because I do understand what you're saying. The role of a director is similar, but the role is similar, but the work we do and the way we do it is completely different. The way that the work the agency does.
Yeah.
I don't know that my work is that much different, because you're managing people and projects and all of those things. The reporting is a little bit different, reporting to a city manager versus reporting to a board.
You have a lot of HR and legal. I mean, you're almost like, in some ways, your own city manager of that district, right? In some way, versus being the director fitting under a different reporting structure.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there's pros and cons of both setups, and there's challenges to both. But thinking about, since you've been in the role of both, reporting to a board, reporting to a city manager, are there aspects that you preferred in one versus the other, and if so, what and why?
I don't think I preferred one over the other. They've both been such outstanding experiences. It's tough reporting to a board, but my board was 8 people, and so it's hard to make 8 people happy. I should say it's impossible to make 8 people happy. There's always somebody that doesn't necessarily agree with the direction you're going or a decision that's been made. So that's a tough balancing act. But at the same time, I enjoyed it, and I had some board members come on our board that weren't necessarily fans of mine to begin with. And then my goal was always to win them over. That was my self-talk, win them over. And I feel like I always did. And so that was rewarding for me, that, I've got this person now that's a fan of mine. And so I liked that piece of it because it was a challenge for me, and I felt like I conquered it. Now here I am in the best situation, which is another thing that attracted me here, is the city manager and the assistant city manager were both the former Parks, Recreation, and Libraries director.
Oh, wow.
So I got a little bit of support, And
now, do you find that difficult? Because I would be afraid if I replaced you, if you moved up to the ACM, if I came in and anything I would do, and everything I would do would probably be different, but I'd be afraid my default would lean different than your default. I mean, we're both wanting to serve communities, but maybe I want the rec center to be open longer. Maybe I'm not impressed with this park or whatever. And those could have been some cornerstones of your career, things that you've worked so hard for that you're super proud of. Have you found that stepping in as someone steps up is a different experience than stepping in when someone steps away?
Yes, I think it's different. It hasn't been a bad experience for me. Actually, the assistant city manager was an acquaintance of mine in Kansas.
Okay.
And so that's one of the ways I found out about this position. So he was very supportive. He knew me there. He knew the work I had done there. So he was very supportive of bringing me into this role. And he said, from day one, I'm not gonna step on your toes. And I do think we have different philosophies. I'm sure all four of us have different philosophies.
Sure.
But they've just been nothing but supportive. So yeah. But I could absolutely see how that could be a challenge in a lot of situations.
So I should say yesterday, not today, but yesterday, Jill and I got a chance to speak in one of our regularly scheduled meetings, but we had this podcast scheduled, and she had asked, what's the podcast going to be like, and tell me a little about it. I mean, I'd like to think I'm a pretty good observer of habits and kind of how our show has been going in general. And I told her what's going to happen is I'm going to give this intro. I'm going to ask you a question. And then most likely Shane's going to come in first. He's going to come in hot with some kind of long question. And then Jay's going to think about it. And they're going to play off of each other. And I nailed it. Like that was.
You nailed it.
That was perfect. And such a great transition, guys, from what we talked about the last time we talked. So anyway, just want to go into something you mentioned before. So you've been clearly you've been part of the best when we talk of the agencies, and that is a reflection on your work, no doubt. So gold medals, that's something that is elusive. It's something that's foreign to many of us. And there's so many agencies out there. How many gold medal finalists are there a year? Is it 25, 5 categories of 5, something like that? So I was just curious, my first conference, I remember going to the gold medal award, not the reception, but when they announce the winners, right? And they do it like an award ceremony. So for those of you who don't know, they go, these are your finalists, and they show a video, and then they announce the winner of the gold medal, and the eruption from the team that is there it's overwhelming, and it's actually very inspiring. What does it take to be a gold? I know this is a really tough question to ask, but what does it take to be a gold medal agency? I think a lot of us would want to know that. And I know time and commitment and a lot goes into it, but from someone who's been a part of it, can you elaborate on it?
I can, but first I have to challenge one of the things you said, that the gold medal success that I've had really had very little to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
It had to do with the entire team that does such amazing work, and it is an honor. And it was a feeling, like I said, I had that feeling when I was a young professional. And so I knew as I stepped into that director role, I wanted the new young professionals in our field to have that same feeling that I had all those years ago. It's just such a feeling of pride. But I think all of our agencies do such amazing work out there that the gold medal is about recognizing that work, but to apply or to be a finalist is really about telling your story. And we've been talking about, telling our story for years now. And I feel very strongly about telling our story. And so I think maybe between me and the people I've worked with, we've gotten pretty good at that, because the judges, they're not able to go visit all the agencies to decide who's going to be a finalist. So what they do is they look at your application and the stories that you've told. They look at your video. If you're a finalist, you have to submit a video and the story that you tell by that. So again, it really just comes back to telling the story. I would encourage all agencies to apply for the gold medal and just do a great job of telling your story, because we're all doing amazing things.
Yeah, I can add, I'm fortunate to work for a gold medal winning agency, and I was there. We actually went for it, and we were a finalist 3 years straight, and I was at the conference every year. So every year it's like, okay, this might be it. And then, they announced the winner, and for 2 straight years, it wasn't us. And then third year, we were successful. And, that team atmosphere that you just mentioned, Jill, and putting it together and working together and making sure everyone knows what that message is, and, the video concept and everything is really like, there is no better explanation of what it takes to work together as a team than to compile all that information, get the mission and message together, and then hopefully come together and, win the gold medal. So I'm looking forward to seeing the list get announced in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll be rooting for you for your next award.
Yeah, thanks for giving me this forum so I can get the
There you go.
entire nation rooting for Roseville.
Yeah, all
Very
8
good.
people that listen to this podcast are on your side. I got a
I'll
question.
take anyone I can get.
I got a question for you. I think she's the first that I can remember that has libraries under her. And I think you see at times Parks and Rec is a quality of life provider, and I think we do it better than anybody. We definitely do it normally better than any other government department because a lot of those other departments are related to infrastructure and support. But you sometimes see, and not always, but it feels like, I don't know, about half the country is not just Parks and Rec. It's Parks and Rec and something. Like whether the city thinks library is a quality of life component, I'm sure both of your locations did, but sometimes it's cemeteries. Sometimes it's airports or whatever. It's almost like it's Parks and Rec and whatever we can throw under them, tourism maybe or whatever. And so, but you've had library in both locations. So you've never not had libraries.
No, I didn't have libraries at Johnson County.
Oh, okay. So it's only been here. So what's that like taking over a department with libraries?
It's been interesting. And actually, I've really enjoyed it. And, I mentioned that Johnson County was a special park and recreation district.
Oh, that's right.
Johnson County also had a special library district. And so we would work closely together with the library on different projects or initiatives that we were maybe doing. So I've always had a love and respect for the libraries. Came out here and I was straight up front, letting everybody know, I've never overseen libraries.
Right.
Just teach me, let me learn from you. And it wasn't always a part of the Parks and Recreation Department here. That happened probably 09, 10, something like that. So it's been almost 15 years. It's been a while. But it wasn't an easy transition. I don't think it ever is when, a new department gets merged. But now we really embrace it here. And it's all about quality of life. And people love their libraries in Roseville. We have 3 of them. And what we have found, we really take advantage of the opportunities of being a blended department. And with our programming, we do story walks in the parks. And we did that at Johnson County, but that was something we did in partnership with the library. But we do it here because that's what we are. We're parks, rec, and libraries. So we have story walks in the park. We have programs like Story Time with a Mermaid. And one of our librarians dresses full out mermaid costume and sits in the pool and reads books with the kids. And so we've got just some really unique and cool programs because of our blended department, and yet separately, although we try not to ever be separately, we're extremely successful as well.
That's awesome. I would think the programming, I know in any city I've ever been in, we have to reach out to the library. Okay, so what are y'all doing on programming? Oh, you're doing Dungeons and Dragons. We'll try to do something else. You're trying not to compete. You're trying to work together. I'm sure it being under one house in some ways helps a lot. It probably also, I've never run a library, but I don't imagine they recover a lot of costs, right? In their nature, they're really service oriented, a lot like aquatics and some other facilities you might oversee. And so does that affect how the city views the department on any type of cost recovery numbers, or is it a division and they understand that's a little different? Or do you have a number that you have to hit? Is it as high as the national average? Anything on that?
Yeah, we're about at the national average. I think we're right around 27%. But the library's not, and that's not the expectation. Although the interesting thing once we blended is they did develop more of that cost recovery mindset.
Sure.
And they do charge for some programs now. I think it's philosophically, the libraries just don't charge for programs. That's just not what they've been. A lot of libraries don't even charge if you use their meeting spaces,
Right.
and we do that. So we've got kind of a little bit of a hybrid with our library, that they do charge for some things, but they also feel so strongly about being accessible and open and available to all. And they meet that mission very, very well. But yeah, we've got different cost recovery goals there.
A follow-up to that, I'm similar to Shane, where I've not been fortunate to manage any sort of libraries. Obviously, like in the recreation world, we have a list of things that we track annually for our our leadership when it comes to program numbers, attendance numbers, revenue, whatever it may be. Are there certain metrics from like a library perspective that you want, whether it's memberships or visitors or number of books that are taken out? I mean, what are some of those metrics that you're always looking at annually?
Those are the exact things that we're looking at. And this city is growing so quickly that I mentioned we have 3 libraries, but we probably need a 4th, just based on our visitations now. And, we're a city of about 150,000, and our libraries get over 500,000 visitors a year. And our circulation, which is, materials checked out or whatever, is 1.2 million. I mean,
Wow.
So they are busy. I remember a time in my life when I thought, does anybody use the library anymore? As everything becomes so accessible online. But believe me, they do. And, they're safe spaces. They're wonderful spaces for people to gather and learn and get information. And our libraries are extremely popular. But yeah, we do really the same metrics for the library that we do for our recreation facilities and programs.
So with the new library that y'all potentially need and maybe in the future would plan on building, I was at I think it was our last conference. I think it was the conference in Phoenix. I saw something in Arlington where they combined a library and a rec center. They did both. Would that be something that would be of interest to you, to have something that would cross over on both sides?
That's exactly what we envision, and we've got a location picked out. All we need is the money. That's the only thing we need to make this happen. But we have the location, we have a vision. We haven't had anybody designed it yet, but yeah, we're thinking community center, library, aquatic center, and just a big community building that offers all of those things.
Jill, this is a good segue, talking about libraries and overseeing teams that are in all these different, really different segments of what you're providing to the community. So you've got your libraries, you got your parks, you got your recreation. You're doing some really interesting things with trainings, and you have a really great concept that we talked about with your leadership teams. And most recently, you told me about a training that you were asked to do by the leadership group and by your own team that was surrounded about a topic that they actually gave you, and that was courageous culture. All right. So this was a topic that I hadn't really, or at least a name that I haven't heard before, those 2 words put together. And we do a lot around staff culture here and try to implement a culture of excellence and really exemplary customer service for our community. So tell us a little bit about courageous culture. Why did your staff come to you with that? And what does it mean?
Well, I will get to that. It sounds like I'm going to get there in a roundabout way, and I probably am, but we are very focused on culture here. That this division or this department had been through a lot of change in the years before I came. They've been through a few directors, and which I've told you where the 2 previous ones are now, but they just hadn't had a lot of continuity. And so it's hard to go through all that change in leadership all the time. So one of my goals here was to provide some stability, to really develop a culture and figure out who we are here. And so we've made a lot of efforts in that regard. And one of the things that I think we've done really well is, and COVID helped prompt this as well. I should mention that I arrived here like right before COVID.
Right. Yeah. So, 4 years.
Yeah. So that wasn't great timing. And my first year here, how you have those first year goals and you're going to develop all these relationships and achieve well, none of that happened, But so coming back from COVID then made the whole culture thing that much more important, because everyone was just worn out, And so what we did was, and we call it our pulse survey. We're just taking a pulse of the department. And we've got some questions that we ask about, what do you think about the organizational structure? And what do you think about the culture? And how's your morale? And how, do you feel safe? And do you feel inspired? And all these questions that we asked them. The results, I didn't have anything to compare with, so the results were the results, but we saw some areas where we didn't score very high. So, communication, accountability, some of those type of things. So we made some concerted efforts to kind of focus on those in the coming year and do some things, teamwork. And of course, everybody felt disjointed after COVID. And so one of the things we did was to develop these teams, and we call them high performing organization teams. I come from a real HPO ingrained background. So we call them HPO teams. And one of them is leadership and staff development. One's about recruitment and retention. One's programming. We talked about the importance of programming, and there's people from the libraries and from the recreation side that sit on that programming team. So they do program cooperatively. But anyway, the leadership and development team came to us with this title for this training. We want you to do a training on courageous cultures. And I'm like, okay, what's that? And they go, what? I don't know. You tell us. Make it what you want it to be. And so I Googled it. I found a book called Courageous Cultures. It's by Karen Hurt and David Dye. And so I bought it, and it was a good book and gave me a lot of ideas. But really what it talks about, what a courageous culture is, and I kind of went by their definition, was it's a place where people share their ideas, where people solve problems, where everyone contributes, where people are energized and motivated. They bring their whole selves to work every day, and they're innovative. So all of those things, and in a nutshell, it's where people speak up. It's where they're not afraid to share their ideas or their thoughts or those things. So that's what we focused on in the presentation that we gave on courageous cultures. And so we just talked about how do we create that kind of a culture and develop an organization where people are comfortable speaking up. And, one of the things that we talked about was people are often rewarded for sharing good ideas, but they're not rewarded just for sharing, and something may have happened in someone's professional life or even personally where they shared an idea, and they may have been made to feel embarrassed or stupid or whatever. And they've learned, okay, it's just safe for me not to say anything. And so we're like, we cannot create that kind of a culture here. So let's not just celebrate our successes, which we often talk about celebrating our successes, but let's celebrate contributions. Let's celebrate people that speak up and reward them for their ideas, even if we don't implement them. And you can't implement everyone's ideas. We talked about then closing the loop. If you don't implement someone's ideas, at least follow up with them and let them know, why or what was done with that, or yeah, that was really considered, and here's why. Because if you don't close that loop and they share an idea, they see nothing, they're like, okay, well, there's that one again. Why am I going to share? So that was really kind of what we based our courageous cultures on, was giving people the freedom and the courage to speak up. And I shared with Tom yesterday a quote that I found. I don't think that was in this book, but I just found it somewhere that said, we generally don't tell people our personal stories at work because we work with strangers, but they remain strangers because we don't share our personal stories. So how do we break that cycle? And so we had a session during our presentation where we let people share their personal stories, and some people didn't want to. And of course, it takes a while to build that trust. But those are just some of the things that we talked about with courageous cultures.
We had Ryan Hegerness on. He talked about failure rate and how that's a part of success, is having a failure rate and being able to tolerate that failure rate. What do y'all do there to ensure a good idea can see itself through fruition, even to the point that more's learned from it not working out than it actually hitting the mark? How do y'all foster that?
Well, we foster that by saying fail forward. We talk about that a lot. Take risks. That's one of our values in our organization, is to be innovative and that we're not afraid to take risks and fail. I feel like we really live by our values. That was another thing that we did coming out of that pulse survey and trying to change our culture, is we looked at our organizational values, and we changed them. Not a lot from what they used to be, but we chose new values. We got a huge group of staff involved in the creation of them, and then we involved all staff in the acceptance of them. And so anyway, that, I think, to answer your questions, that's what we do, is we build those kind of things into our values so people know that they're safe doing that. One of the things we did with our values, that I would recommend this for any agency if they're not already doing that, is you have the words, that are your value, but then you need to have a value statement as well, because a lot of times the words of a value mean different things to different people. And if you really want to be on the same page, kind of add a little sentence explaining what that means. And so that's what I talked about, innovation. And so our value is innovation, but it says we encourage new ideas, seek creative ways to solve problems, take strategic risks, and learn from our mistakes. And so that kind of tells our staff what we mean by innovation.
Thinking about everything you just said is phenomenal. And I think it obviously builds a culture that people want to be in. And I think it's easy to do that when you have existing staff and they're going to learn to like speak up more and give ideas. How do you get new hires onboarded into this philosophy, or when someone joins your organization and they've never been a part of these meetings or been a part of this culture, like, is there a certain way you introduce it, or is there group meetings that they just kind of get thrown into it, or is there something you guys talk about during the interview process?
We talk about it a little bit during the interview process, but not much. But if we're talking about just new employees, it happens with their new employee orientation. Okay. I mean, you know, within the first month that they're here, they're learning all about our mission, vision, and values. And I meet with all of our new employees within their first month here as well, just to have like 15 to 30 minutes just to get to know them, and they can get to know me and understand my vision for the organization. And so they really have a good idea of our goals, our mission, our vision, our values very shortly after they walk in the door.
So Jill, I want to play a little game. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but we like to do some of that around here where we mix it up. And so with your experience,
is it competitive? Is there a winner?
It's you know what? Not today.
Dang
and
it. Okay.
I think if we did it that way, you would probably win. So you know, we're gonna keep this to your experiences, and I'm gonna call this one. So I just made it up like 2 seconds ago, to be honest. But we're gonna call it the 3 Ps. Okay.
Okay.
So 3 Ps in a pod. I want to know, for our listeners out there, your favorite park, your favorite pastime, and your favorite food. Now, bear with me. Food doesn't start with P, but in Pflugerville, it does.
Yeah. Pflugerville.
So,
in Pflugerville, everything starts with P.
Everything that starts with F starts with P, right?
Yeah, there's a little P everywhere you go in Pflugerville.
Yes. All right. So, favorite park, pastime, and food, place to eat in Kansas. And then I would like to know the same thing about now in Roseville, which, for a point of reference, would you call that Northern California? You're close to Sacramento, but is that more central, more northern? How do you identify that area of California?
We call it northern.
Okay. Yeah. So I think those are 2 places, you know, between Kansas and where you are, that not everybody gets an opportunity to visit. So I'd love to know, from your perspective, your favorite pastime, park, and food with a P.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad. And you're letting me do it for both locations. I'm really glad for that. So it doesn't sound like I'm picking favorites of
That's
one
right.
or the other.
Of course.
Okay. So Johnson County, my favorite park, and that's really, really hard, but I'm going to say Shawnee Mission Park. It's about a 1,200 acre park. It's where my office was as the director. That's where our administration buildings are. And how wonderful is it to have your office in a park?
Great.
It's nothing better. It had a large lake where we had a marina and people could rent boats, and there were trails everywhere. It was disc golf. I mean, it was just, it was a huge park that had pockets of active spaces and huge areas of just passive recreation. So anyway, I would say Shawnee Mission Park. My favorite pastime there, well, that's where my family grew up. So it would have to be spending time with my kids, going to all their sporting events, and just family time at that stage in my life.
Now, can I ask a question, a follow-up on that? Was there something as a family that you did quite often? Whether it was a Royals game? Last time we talked about apple picking, which is very foreign to Shane, and he made fun of. But was there something as a family that you really did a lot that was a great memory? Or
no, I have no good memories. That's not true. I have 3 boys, and they all were avid soccer players. So truly, our lives revolved around soccer for more than a decade, you know, because they were far apart in age too. And so our vacations revolved around traveling for soccer tournaments. I mean, we always made fun wherever we went, but it typically revolved around soccer. And I wouldn't trade that for a moment either, you know. So I guess that's what we enjoyed doing as a family.
Awesome.
Okay, so now my food with a P, that from Johnson County, of course, I have to say Kansas City barbecue. I mean, that's the one thing I miss out here is there's just no barbecue like they have in Kansas City. If you've not had Kansas City barbecue, you got to get it when you go there because it's delicious.
Do you have a spot that you would give a plug to right now?
I would give a spot to Q39.
Q39. All right.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Q39 in Kansas City. Okay, so here in Roseville, I'll make this a quick because I know I'm rambling. Royer Park is a beautiful park here in Roseville. It's right downtown. Shortly before I came here, they did this amazing project where they created bridges that go from the downtown area into Royer Park. And so from the downtown library, there's a bridge to Royer Park. From the city hall, there's a bridge to Royer Park. From the trail system, there's a bridge to Royer Park. And it's one of our oldest parks, 1910. So old, mature trees, and we're really trying to activate that park. We got the Sacramento Kings to partner with us on a basketball court there a couple of years ago. The court that was there was just in poor shape. And so the Kings came in and built a new court that has a huge Kings logo on it. And it's very colorful and super cool. And just this summer, we dedicated a new destination playground that's like no other that we have in the city. So Royer Park is a very special park. And again, it's just in the heart of downtown. So very nice. Pastime here is hiking. There's just so many places here to hike that absolutely love that. And my favorite food here, not a fan of the barbecue out here yet. I just haven't found the place. So I'm going to say probably, I'll use a P word. I'll say pasta, you know, and yeah, there's a lot of great restaurants out here. So I don't really have a favorite food or even a favorite restaurant. There's just a lot of them.
Are you sure? Because we're picking up sponsors right now. So if you do that...
When I go to the coast, I have to get clam chowder. You know, next time we go to the coast, we got to get clam chowder.
Well, thank you for indulging us and playing along with that. And we had a wonderful time today. Shane, Jay, I don't mean to end this by any means, but I just, I want to thank you for joining us and taking the time out of your busy schedule. And we are really looking forward to seeing you in Dallas. I
look forward to seeing you in Dallas too. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on. This was great.
Thanks so much. This was
our
awesome.
Pleasure. All right. Take care, Jill.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
That was really good. I don't know her very well. So that was good to get to know her more. What an incredible career she's had already. Someone with that much career experience, you'd love to get into questions, and we just didn't have the opportunity. And I think that's what's cool about our show is we don't have any really standard things. We just kind of let the conversation go where it goes. But I would have loved to have heard some of her career influences, some of her mentors, some of, maybe some of her proudest achievements that she's accomplished in 35 plus years in this field. Like, good grief. I'm sure she's got some really cool things to talk about.
Yeah, I give her a lot of credit to just get up and leave a county or a position that she's been in for so long, obviously, and not just leave it for another department, but leave it and go across the country.
Sure, and take your partner with you, and your grandkids, no matter where they are, have to new house, new location, new everything. Very, kudos.
And like we talked about earlier, it's just like not only was it across the country, new department, but it's going from a district to the agency, and a lot of similarities, and it's an easy move, right?
Come on. No, I think, and she's being very modest, but I don't know if Roseville was getting a lot of gold medal opportunities before she got there. I'm sure she's had a huge influence on that department.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
And I love that we talked about the gold medal, just knowing that obviously we're gearing up for conference. And I always look forward every year to kind of do a little dig into all of the agencies that are up for a gold medal. And some of them I know a lot more about than others. And Roseville is one that, with it being on the other side of the country, I don't know a lot about, but now it's piqued my interest. And I'm on their website right now looking up Royer Park and other facilities they operate.
When I was in Fort Worth, we were finalists 3 times while I was there. Didn't get it any of those 3 times. And it's tough to be on the losing end of that, and having to be excited that you made it to where you are and be excited for the agency that obviously was selected, but doing that uphill battle all over again, knowing that you're going to have to apply again for it the following year.
Yeah, there's several this year that are going for it again for the second or third or maybe even 4th year. And it's like, you hate to see that every year, and you just, you're pulling for them.
Good job, Tom.
Yeah. Thanks guys. Yeah. I figured it was one of those too, where it's bound to happen that that we're going to have guests like that. Not all three of us necessarily have had experiences with, and I hadn't had experiences with Jill until the mentorship program.
Yep.
And I'm telling you, I mean, my last two mentors, and I don't want to even say the name of the other one because I probably already have, and then you're going to expect that individual as a guest. But they have been phenomenal. Just the conversations that I've had with Jill, they're so amazingly natural, just like what we just experienced. And I've learned so much from her. You know, we didn't get a chance to talk about the mentorship program, which is something we actually talked about potentially discussing. She chaired it. She did a phenomenal job with it. And I'm not sure that we have to go into it every episode because I think with Noons and someone else we did, but you know, I'm just so thankful for that program because I was put in touch with Jill, and you know, here we are having this great conversation with her.
Yeah, I think it's good to point out the fact that you have the opportunity to build your own network in this industry. You can go to conference. If you can't afford to go to conference, you can get in the mentorship program. You know, if you don't have the time to get in the mentorship program, you can. There are pathways for you to build your network, even if you don't have support from your agency, even if you don't have financial abilities to go to conference, that you can expand who your network is, who you can reach out to, who you can lean into for tough questions or advice. And I think it's another example of you doing that even this far into your career, which is pretty cool.
Well, guys, that will wrap it up. I want to thank everybody who's listening to our episode featuring Jill Geller of Roseville, California today. For Shane Mize and Jay Tryon, I'm Tom Venniro, and thank you for being a part of RecLess. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
See you guys.